Hey Jess.
Hey Misha, how are you today?
Yeah, really good yourself.
Good. Yeah,
Yep.
really good. I've been away, so I'm all refreshed and raring to go for this week.
Yep. Yep. You had a good time away.
Oh, it was so good. I think we both had nice weekends because we're both really smiley today.
Yeah, I did have a really good weekend. I've had a really good couple of weeks, probably, really. When I say that, I just think kind of focused and inspired. Thinking
Yep.
when when you're inspired, it just really gets the motor running,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you
And I
know.
can see you're beaming and it's like you've got this forward thing.
Huh. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So what's
Okay, well,
inspired you?
Well, I think um, what we're about to talk about, so we might as well just get into it because I think
Yeah.
that it's so fitting about. So when you mentioned, well, the last podcast we did was about sitting in your muck, and how do you do that, and is that and maybe both of us had experienced a state where we were kind of sitting in our muck a little bit and just going, oh, how do we do this, and it's good to be able to talk about those things. But also, when you're in your muck, you eventually want to get around to cleaning it up, as
Mm.
we described, like, and you use that metaphor of cleaning, your house or your bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
You can sit in it for so long, and then eventually you want to get to this place where you kind of start going, okay, I've got to clean it. And so,
Get those cobwebs from the corners. Get this
yeah,
dark, the dust and all
exactly.
the crap that's sitting in there.
Yeah, well, I'm a dishes person. Dishes, anyone who knows me knows that dishes can sit on my bench for ages. I just like they're just the last thing that I want to do. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It's probably because there's so many of them. So, but even when I do them, I feel like, oh, good on you. You did the dishes, because I just find it one of those tedious jobs that, but once I've done them, I feel so good. So when you and I were talking, you said the word radical responsibility. Is that a
Mhm.
term you've come up with yourself? Radical responsibility?
I'm not sure actually. I might have heard it before
Yeah.
at anyway, but
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I love, um, and I'm proud of now. I
Mm.
never used to. I used to kind of, I don't want to be like that. Not everybody, is like that. But I feel like no, it's actually a skill and it's actually a superpower, and I love that. I love being really responsible for something that that's not everything, but it's just one thing that I want to um, take care of and make sure that I get the outcome.
So what does it mean? What does it mean, radical responsibility, to you?
Um, I feel like I want to use the metaphor of me being head chef and being responsible for what's going on in my kitchen. Um, and I kind of got this idea also from the fact that I went and visited my patisserie mentor last week
Oh,
and
yeah.
spent some hours there. And he is radically responsible too for the whole team. And so I was like, wow, I do have that. And I probably didn't like it before, but now I do. I see its worth. Um, and it's about being the person in charge of everything and making sure that everything is working well, everything is getting out on time, everything's getting cleaned, everything's um, in process. We've begun. We're on time. Everything is happening as it should be.
And
So
how
that's
does
just
that,
the metaphor.
as a metaphor, so how
Yeah.
then would you apply that in personal development?
In personal development, I think I am the head chef of what's going on here. Whatever I'm perceiving to be happening outside of me, whatever people are saying or doing and activities or whatever I'm perceiving from the outside, I'm the person in charge of whether I allow that to affect me or not. And I'm also the person in charge that works out why it's happened, what mess has happened here, who's left the shoes here.
And how do you mitigate that problem? So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do about it? And
Yeah.
so I make choices around that, and I also decide how we're going to handle it, what's the best way to handle it, and let's get onto it now.
Yeah. Or get onto it when you can, or as well, or, you know, there's a whole variety, but it's basically, is that just the radical responsibility is that you decide how these things are going to go and at what pace and at what
That's right.
stage.
Yeah. And also
that
what
you
needs to
also
happen.
have, yeah.
What needs to
And
happen now?
yeah. And how far does that extend? So when we say radical, for example, what does the radical part mean of that being responsible?
It's almost extreme, but I am the person in charge. I can't put anybody else in charge. So radical to me means be very direct and very clear as to who's responsible here. You are.
Mm.
When I say you are, I mean me.
Yeah.
You know?
Me too.
Yeah. So I am the person responsible first.
Yeah.
Other people can be responsible second, but they were mean to me, or they were, they left their shoes here when they shouldn't have. But the first person is me that is responsible for what gets said inside my head, how I organize it, and what needs to happen to be okay, to be able to function as a functional adult.
Yeah. So you're the head chef of your experience.
Yes.
You're taking full responsibility of your entire internal and external experience. Well, the external being a flow-on effect from the internal experience. Does that make sense? So our interactions, anything that you do from
perceive from my perception of what happens. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
And the reason why I got there, as we were talking before we went on, was because I've had quite a few things happen this week and the last where I have taken that stand. I've been radically responsible for myself, and things have shifted because of it. I've had a different experience because of it.
When you say different, better, is that what you mean by shift? It's a better. It's as opposed to, like, you're choosing to take radical responsibility means that you want to improve your scenario, improve your situation, make it better. Why would you take radical responsibility is probably what I'm trying to point to.
Yeah, it could be better. I think we've had this conversation in previous podcasts as to what is better.
Mm-hmm.
Just being myself, putting myself first, and being in peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas in my head, when I hear better, I think peak performance.
Yeah. Okay.
Doesn't have to. I don't even have to go there. But if I'm taking care of myself first, what do I need? What do I want for me? And sometimes it's not better, or it's just, I'm just going to be neutral. This is not going to be anything to worry about, say.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not going to put myself into this state where I start thinking, oh my God, I'm getting sick, I'm going to die, or whatever catastrophic thinking I might do, whatever thinking I might do around someone's actions or someone's words to me, whatever state that I could normally put myself into quite easily, don't need to go there.
Yeah.
Just choosing different.
It speaks to the hijacking thing, I suppose. So to me, it is, when I say better, for me, it means that better is not being hijacked if I can help it. Because for me, when I'm hijacked, I'm not, the actions that come from being hijacked beyond that aren't usually beneficial for me. And they might not be for somebody else as well, but they usually hinder me. They prevent me from, I might be on some sort of a path to doing something. If I get hijacked, that path, it's changed. I've changed course. I'm no longer on that path that was, it was an optimal path for me. I actually, really liked where I was heading. But when I get hijacked, I'm like, boom.
So it hinders that.
Course. Yep. There's a reduced quality in everything I'm about to do. And it's quite messy. And, we've had these conversations around hijacking and whatnot. And then I try to control the outcome, all those things. So for me, when I say better, I think I mean it improves from getting hijacked and the flow-on effects that will come from that. so
yeah.
But I like
So
how you
that
clarify
change.
that, because I like how you clarify that, because for some people better definitely would be a performance-based thing. High performance, high,
Type 3s.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that.
Yeah.
But I got that 3 wing. So, I've got that too. It's
You got
better.
it going on.
Yeah. Anyway, well, and there you go. And that speaks to why I'm in such a good mood, or why I've had such a good couple of weeks, is because once I sort of went, okay, I took responsibility in the muck that I may have been sitting in a couple of weeks ago, say, whenever it was. And then just sat in it. And I feel like, and we've had this conversation, that taking responsibility is also owning it, seeing it for what it is, not reframing it, not trying to avoid it, not trying to Pollyanna the thing up. It's kind of like sitting in it and going, okay, this is this icky, micky, yucky, gross thing, or feels gross, sitting with it and then understanding it. But then, okay, now how do I move out of this? And this is the work that both you and I love doing. This is what, it's the personal development stuff comes into it. What tools and techniques can we use? And I find that exciting. I start mapping out things, I was like, oh, how can I get through this little scenario?
Our superpower.
Yeah. And that is radical responsibility. So when you said that term, I got really excited. I'm like, that's it. That's what it is. It's taking that full responsibility. And the radical part is a really good emphasis, because it's even fuller and fuller. It's not just responsibility. It's looking at it like a chef would in a kitchen. And I've done chefing as well. And I've been a head chef in a kitchen before. So I understand. You are looking at everything, every little detail about how you can keep that kitchen maintained and get everything timely, high quality, standards are here, everything, all the orders in the kitchen, the whole lot, presentation, staff coming in, you're managing them, the whole lot. And and if you don't take responsibility at the helm of a kitchen, you won't keep that job for long. It's messy.
No. And shit's going to go down.
Yeah.
Which is okay. But, if there's someone in charge, things will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that you own it. Because if you don't own it, if you don't own the mess that you're sitting in, and if you don't own the muck, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know where to start. So being that radical responsibility is kind of taking charge where others don't want to. Parts of you don't want to. They don't want to take charge. It's too scary. It's too much work. Like, look at all the muck I have to clean up in my life. Where do I start?
Yeah. There's so many things, and my brain's kind of so many little avenues that I want to take that down, what you've just said. But I think one of the first things you just said was about, taking that responsibility. And what does that look like? You and I talked earlier about how that looks at the intellectual level. We can take responsibility like you and I do. That's just what we do. We map it out. We try to work out, why did I do that, or whatever, or come up with strategies to, move out of those patterns of thinking or behavior. But then also radical responsibility is what we always speak about, is about being authentic as well. So it's not about necessarily, and this is a big one for me, it's not necessarily getting it right all the time, or, I should have done this, or I should, whatever. It's not about that. It's more about just being authentic. How did that go? How was I affected then? And taking responsibility can look like, how can I manage that for myself next time?
Yeah.
We talked about that too.
Yeah, I remember, was it the hijacking podcast? I think it was the hijacking podcast we did, where I was speaking to even just introducing the fact that you're part of it. You're part of whatever's happening. Just introducing that thing, that idea that you're part of the hijacking. I'm part of the panic attack. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to believe it, but just introduce it to begin with. If you are part of it, that means anything you do can change or impact it. Okay. Where I see radical responsibility also is the fact that it's like an introduction to just putting that seed in your mind and saying, this is yours. Whatever you think is happening, this is yours. So where is it in you? Where is it in your past? Could be past hurts, could be belief systems, perceptions. It could be all sorts of things. But if you just introduce the fact that this is yours, you don't have to give it to someone else. You're the one to blame in this situation, you over there, forget about that. Just introduce the fact that this is yours first. You can do that later. Still blame it later.
That's good you said that, because what I was thinking is that's one of the hardest things to let go of. We've talked about this in past podcasts. It's so juicy to blame, to go, oh, but it's you. I love how you've just said, you can do that later. So keep it.
Yeah.
But still, you can put it in your pocket and go, yeah.
Because it's so easy. And like you say, juicy. It's so easy to go, this is why I'm treating you like this, because you're this and you're that.
Yeah.
So it's not
you're
my
the
fault.
one doing this to me. It's you. It's your person. Everybody says so. All those things. Yeah.
Demonizing somebody else for your behavior.
But you can keep it. You're basically saying
you can keep. Keep
I'm
that. I'm not saying get rid of that.
Yeah.
I'm saying before you go to that step, all you need to do in the radical responsibility framework that we're talking about would just be own it first. This is something about you first. Just take that in. It's something here is about what's happened in your past, or it's a belief system, or it's a perception, or it's a hurt. And then if you go to that first, you are taking full responsibility first for your experience. How am I going to, where is it? What is it? You can go into that. But at least where is it sitting in you, in your past or in your history that's created this feeling? And there's all places we can go from there. But just that, all I'm talking about is that radical responsibility is to introduce the fact that this is yours. That's why I liked when you said own it.
Yeah.
Own it first. This is about you. Then, and that kind of leads me into all sorts of places, Then I can explore myself in it. I can sit in the muck. I can look at the mess, like we said, looking at your messy bedroom and going, oh God, where do I start? But it can take you to that. It can take you to all of those steps where you can get through to working on it. You can get through to understanding it. You can get through to holding yourself in it if it's about pain or an old wound. But just that introduction of, hang on, own this first. This is about you. That's pivotal.
You said before that people they don't like it. They don't like radical responsibility or the term or whatever. Why do you think that is, based on what you've just said? Why do you think they don't like it?
I think it's because it's like a mirror. If there's somebody effectively trying to do the right thing, which means to be the leader, to be the parent, to be the adult, and you're not quite there yet, it's almost shaming. It's almost like, oh, who does she think she is? She's trying to do something better. Or who does this person think they are? They're trying to do the right thing in this scenario. And it's making the other person not look quite as good, or there's a shaming around not quite being ready to take responsibility. It's almost like, if I was to use a metaphor, it's like if I was to go to your room and go, well, someone doesn't know how to clean in here, That's a parent that does that, a parent's the one that highlights things that need to happen. It's the parent the leader that says, get your act into gear, go clean that corner up, you get onto the pastries, you get the meats, that head chef has to point out everything that has to happen People don't like that. People don't like being told what to do if they're not ready to do it. People don't like being shown where they're not stepping up to being a leader for themselves. There's a lot of shame that comes up if someone hasn't done that for themselves. And so you get demonized if you're the person that's responsible. So I can just, as I'm saying that, all the bits of me that aren't quite ready to lead or to step into anything are going, yeah, who does she think she is, that head chef, But I can put the head chef in, and I can also, part of me, there's also a little girl that's scared, that doesn't know what to do, hasn't been shown what to do, how to take care of something that has hurt. And that's what I think is going on in your internal world, and can happen, out in the real world. I mean, how popular are you if you're the person that's the most responsible in the room?
Yeah, I think it could be a personality thing too, what you've just said, because although that does sort of resonate, for me, it's probably more like I won't take responsibility because I'd just rather somebody else do it. Not because I have a fear of people saying, oh, who do you think you are? I actually don't have that in me, but I do have a fear of, it's like of growing up, really, of taking, there has been that in the past of just being an adult enough, to, it's almost like in the past, I've wanted somebody else to do it for me. Do I have to do the thing?
Yeah, we don't want to grow up.
Do I have to do my dishes? Nobody else is going to do them. It's like you do have to do them, but I leave them there like somebody else might, but they won't. It's, my point is, there's a part of me that's probably just always like, oh, can't somebody else do it? Can't a parent do it for me? Can't somebody do the thing for me? Why do I have to do it? There's
and why don't you want to do it?
Pardon?
Why don't you want to do it?
Well, I think in the past, if I haven't wanted to, I've felt that resistance of like, it's just too hard, like honestly, like a belligerent teenager. It's like I got stuck in teenage years and just went, it's all too hard. I just don't want to do it. It's like, can't somebody else do it? So yeah, there's probably just been a real immaturity, like this immature mentality of like, but surely anybody else will do this thing for me, and not actually stepping up and going, no, there isn't anybody coming to do it for you. It's almost like hanging on somewhere there. I got stuck, could have been teenage, who knows where. I just, there's been times when I just haven't wanted to take responsibility and do it myself, whatever it is. And it feels like if I can put it on somebody else, even if it's blame, it's that person's fault, then I don't have to change that thing. I don't have to move forward because I can't, because they're stopping me. I can't move forward. They're stopping me.
And so, you can't create change in other people. So the fact that you're putting it on them means that nothing has to change here. It's not me.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And there's certainly been that thing within me that's kind of like, well, I can't because they're stopping me, or something that was said to me when I was a kid is stopping me, or, it's all those things that I've put in place, these little blockers to stop me from taking responsibility, from radical. And I like the term radical responsibility because it's, it's like next level. It's kind of looking like I love the chef metaphor. You're just looking at every single way that you can take responsibility, not just down to an iota.
And the fact that, imagine if somebody doesn't get their steak, who are they going to go to?
Oh, yeah. I used to cook steak all the time, man. Yeah, not only do they don't get it, but they got to get it rare, medium rare.
Yeah, but who's responsible?
Yes, I know.
It's not going to be the dish hand or the person that is on the meats, or the vegetable. It's the head chef that's in charge of the kitchen that's responsible, just like, a manager. So
everything.
That's what I mean by radical. You are responsible for everything.
Yeah.
Even where you think you're not responsible, you are responsible.
Yeah.
That's why it's radical. It's extreme. And
Yeah.
you don't have to use that concept all the time, but it definitely gets the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't. I think that's the beauty. We always talk about choices, but you don't. I think it's a nice intention to set, you know, like if you're going to set like the pinnacle of intention is radical responsibility, you know, but you can just take responsibility in every little moment. It doesn't have to be this full on like, right, let's smash it out. You know, I'm gonna be radically responsible. I'm not, you know, I'm not one of those people by person. But I love that as overall an overarching intention of like, okay. And you know that I do that, and I know you do that. We are quite radical. We are extreme in our responsibility. We just look for every little way that we can be responsible. And I love that. You know, it's cool. It's taking, it's empowering. That's a word. But the truth is, the more responsibility I take, the more I can kind of have a say over my whole experience. Like, you know, the entirety of it, as much as possible of it. And we've been using this term expansion. I don't know, you know, I've been saying that a lot lately, expansive. You know, it's expansive because you're kind of like looking at every little way that you can expand your experience. You know, you can make it greater, you can make it fuller, whatever you want, you can achieve, whatever, however you want to look at it.
Are you connecting that to your, when you use better? Or is expansive different?
Expansive is probably the next step. Better is
like
probably,
a richer?
Like what, sorry?
Like a richer life?
Yeah. Expansive is probably an extension of better. Better is an alternative for me, particularly for me, that has certainly, you know, has experienced hijacking many times throughout my life. So, and like what I described before, when I do become hijacked by my emotions, and that could be anger, self-pity, whatever, you know, all those things, when I'm high, it changes the experience. The experience just becomes quite negative, you know, not expansive, the opposite to expansive, just quite reduced and dense and heavy, you know. And I think, there's no creativity because your mind's just constantly, there's no inspiration because your mind's just hijacked, you know, you just pinpointed to this, you know, thing that you're focused on. You know, when we get hijacked, we just become focused on a thing. It really just keeps going around in circles. So for me to not continually experience hijacking is just better, you know, because then I have space. I've created more space for inspiration or creativity, or, you know,
it frees you up.
Frees me up to make more choices that are beneficial, fun, whatever.
Yeah.
So
do podcasts.
Yeah. So I think I've enjoyed the past few weeks taking responsibility because of all those things I just described. You know, I've created more space for my experience. I've done some painting, which has been really nice. I mean, canvas painting.
Wow.
Which I'm not. I've
Go,
always
Misha.
been, I know, but I've always been quite creative with my hands and played music, you know, drew. I was a drawer, you know, when I was younger. Never did I think that I would actually enjoy painting, but I've created that space for it, is what I'm saying. I think I'm freeing up more space to be able to do creative things, which feel really great. They're inspirational.
Love that. It's like building and constructing more of you and being that authentic you, getting in touch with who you really are, because it's freed up space from sitting in the muck or sitting in whatever space that, you know, it's almost like that was driving, not you. The radical responsible part of you hasn't taken over yet. And when I talk about the radical responsibility also, I'm talking to like functional adulting, which is part of the workshop that I was writing last year. So the functional adulting also is kind of in line with that, because you don't get the choice as a functional adult. You don't get the choice to not go to work and pay the bills. It's what needs to get done. You don't have options and go, I might not go to work. I might not go to work for the next month, you know. I might get the kids to just walk themselves to school and cook their own dinners and do their own shopping, even though they're like 8. I don't know. You know, you don't get to do that as a functional adult. You don't get those choices. You have to perform. You have to be a parent. You have to put petrol in the car. You've got to get your bills done. You've got to clean the house. You've got to cook. You've got to feed yourself. You don't get a choice. It's things you have to do as a functional adult. You've already decided that this is what needs to be done. This is what we're doing. There's no questioning and there's no doubts. A functional adult does not go into doubt about, oh, should I cook for the kids? I'm not really good at making eggs, or, you know, they just do it. They get on with it. There's no space for that, for the doubts and all that stuff. That can come another time. But when you're in that functional adult space, it's you're responsible. You're responsible for what needs to go on with yourself. You're responsible for getting yourself on time to work. You're responsible for getting petrol in the car. You're responsible for doing your job to the best ability that you have. You know, that's what I'm talking about, being a functional adult, not getting hooked constantly by your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, your perspectives. Oh, but maybe I'm not the best at work, and oh, maybe I won't go today. I'm not, you know, I don't feel very confident. And but when you're a functional adult, you might not feel confident, but you still have to do it. You still have to go.
Yeah. So what you've described in terms of functional adulting sounds like I could meeting all your basic needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've definitely operated at that level of meeting basic needs, all the things you described, and I would consider that I was a functional adult for that reason, because I had to go to work, do all the, you know, get on the wheel, go around and round in circles. I don't do the dishes, admittedly. So not quite functional adulting there, but, you know, basic needs, you know, it's, you know, I can have them met. But would you say that when you start, that whole radical responsibility thing is almost the next level, because it's kind of like you can keep going around and around in circles as a functional adult and just doing your basic needs. But if you want more than just your basic needs being met, then you're going to have to start taking responsibility of your own personal experience now. So, yeah. I mean, I could, like you just said, getting hooked. I could meet basic needs and get hooked and go around and say, you know, all those things can keep going on and I can still function. And I'm tired as, I've been there. I've been tired, you know, tired as, and I'm just barely making, you know, I'm just like, the drudgery. But you do it because you have to, like you said, especially when you've got kids, you just got to get up and do it. But when you start thinking, but I want more than just meeting my basic needs. I want more than just being functional. I want to be inspired. I want to do things that I love. I want to be passionate. I want to, you know, and in order to do that, I've just found that I've had to be more responsible and radically responsible, which is like, because it's next level in that sense. You know, you're kind of like having to go to the next level to start really looking into those things so that you can free up space to allow for more, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I like how you've clarified that, because the radical responsibility would be to be responsible for your experience of it all on top of it.
Yes.
But when I think of all the functional adult, it's not a survival mode. So when you were saying, you know, just kind of getting through
meeting basic
the
needs.
day, meeting the basic needs, that's not what I perceive to be functional. That's the surviving for me. Functional is leading your pack, leading your family, helping out the kids where they need, helping your community, It's not survival. It's actually
Okay.
being a person with purpose and being community oriented, participating in life fully.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we talk about radical responsibility, is that kind of mindset and the I'd suppose it's like an acute focus inside of yourself of what kind of experience you want and how you're managing that. Like you said, choosing your experience and being really mindful of the experience you're wanting for yourself and being responsible for that experience.
And when we take responsibility, we can start choosing, and we've discussed this in past podcasts, but we can actually start choosing, how we need things to go.
Yeah.
Because we've taken responsibility.
Because we've owned it. Like we said originally in the podcast, it's like going into a bedroom and looking at the mess and owning that mess is yours. Nobody else has come in and done this. What's happened to you, what you've done. Nobody else has participated in your perceptions. They're just living their own lives, doing their own things, and somehow, we trigger each other with our wounds, our belief systems. But nobody has made this mess in here. So being really radically responsible is to own it and say, all of this mess is mine. I left the shoes in the doorway. These shirts on the floor are mine. All right, I own this. This is my drama. This is my mess. And then, so how do you want to do that? How do you want to take care of it? What do you want? What do you want it to look like? And being responsible for making sure you do get that.
So owning it, for example, because what's coming to mind is, so what do you think when we talk about radical responsibility, if someone says, it could be a teenager who has a super controlling parent, right? Let's just think about that from that perspective. They might be able to say, I can't do that because my parent is controlling that scenario, stopping me from doing it. But no matter what I do, I cannot move forward in that thing because my parent keeps putting a stopper on it.
Like, what do you mean? Like what?
How would somebody how would a teenager say even own it? Like, how do they take responsibility? They might perceive that they can't move forward because a parent is stopping them from moving forward. So how would that teenager, do you think, take responsibility, radical responsibility for their experience?
I would have to say, what is the responsibility? What is their responsibility in this scenario? Because is it a parent that's having to take responsibility for something there, or is the teenager responsible for paying the bill? Like, where is the edge of responsibility for the teenager, and where does it belong to the adult? If the child is having to do adult things, then I wouldn't want to go there, because that's the functional adult's not taking responsibility. But if the teenager wants more freedom comes at the growth of responsibility. You can't have freedom if you don't have the discipline.
The discipline in
the responsibility, taking care of something.
Okay.
Because if you're disciplined in the fact that you're the head chef and you're the one responsible, and you've got your rules on how this will work in the kitchen, how will we get food out in the next 20 minutes, there has to be step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like, you can't go, oh, whatever. How about you come with the plate? Oh, no, like, it just can't be whatever. It has to be organized. It has to be disciplined. We all have to be committed to it. And in 20 minutes, this has to be done. So there has to be discipline put in, and then we've got the freedom to do whatever we like, because it's got sorted and it's got done.
So how would a teenager discipline themselves in that scenario? Like they're constantly running with
What are
this
they
idea.
responsible for? Get to what you're responsible for: your studies, yourself, your room,
Got ya.
your cleanliness, your health, your sports, whatever it is. Be
Yeah.
responsible to
Manage what
take
you can
your
be responsible for.
what you're responsible for. Yeah. And then you
Okay.
get freedom. You get the
including your
freedom.
emotions, right? I mean, their emotions.
That's a
like,
bit. Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, because there's a whole heap of stories that can be built around, oh, my parent this, my parent this, my parent this, you know, that is doing this and therefore ... they're this. They create a story about that parent.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to say that's a bit because, you know, that prefrontal cortex, you know, hasn't quite fully developed until they get past their teens and they haven't got the logical response to do that. But is it?
Well, it's
like,
still happening though. It's still happening on a day-to-day basis if they're modeling a parent that's in control and is not hijacked constantly.
Yeah.
It's still happening. It doesn't mean it's not happening yet. It's still happening every day to get to that. Their hormones are, you know, raging as well as teenagers. So that, you know, they need the support. They need that emotional support. They need to understand their feelings. There's some emotional intelligence that is required at that age as well. And that
So
comes
you would
from the
just
parents.
say to that teenager then, just take responsibility for what you can, like what's within your power to take responsibility of.
Yeah,
take
definitely.
as much responsibility of that as you can, and that's where the empowerment comes, the freedom comes. And like all of us, there's an element that we have to accept that we just don't have control over. You know, there's depending on where we are and what our situation is. But so it would almost be like just kind of, is that the advice you would sort of give, or, you know, around that is just try to take responsibility for what you can.
Yeah, for what is age appropriate. Obviously, a 19-year-old's not going to have the same responsibilities as a 11-year-old or 12-year-old. So whatever is appropriate for that age, or, you know, that your parents, that's what is normal for your home. You might have a disabled parent, and your responsibility is a little bit more than other people at your age. You might have to do dishes, you know, a year, whatever. There's no set thing. This is what you do at age 12 and this is what you do at age 14.
Yeah.
It's just whatever is working in that unit, in that system as well.
I love how you clarified that there is no set. It is within, you're talking about the system that you're in. So you're relating to, okay, really it's just relevant to whatever system that you're working within, which, you know, your environment. Yeah. Your home, and how does that look? Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, I got working very early because my mum was a single mum. And so I learned responsibility very early on about income, taking care of myself, working, helping mum out with money. And that doesn't happen in every system. But it doesn't mean that it was wrong, and it doesn't mean that other kids my age should be doing that. Because it was my experience. It was part of my life and what happened in my world.
In that sense, it probably doesn't. It's like you said before, if we're taking responsibility, I could be wrong here, but it's just off the top of my head. What I'm thinking is potentially then, as long as we take responsibility in ways that we can, it shouldn't matter what's happening within the environment to a degree. You know, not just in a relatively regular home environment. And I was much the same. I grew up in my mum was a single parent as well, and I was the one who took responsibility, and I was looking after my brothers, and so it was much the same. You know, I was cooking and at a young age and 10, and that's okay. I look back and think those experiences were fine. They were just experiences.
Yeah.
There was a lot of ways that I was immature and certainly didn't take responsibility.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned earlier, it's also down to modeling. So do you have a parent that's modeling responsibility or modeling a certain mindset that's going to be beneficial in terms of taking responsibility as well. But and how much of that is in your environment so you can model it. So my point is, I think that even that idea of responsibility, you could almost apply that, whatever your scenario is, whatever your environment looks like, you can still take responsibility, which speaks to the question that I asked in the first place. Because really what I'm saying is, there's a lot of people that would say, but I can't, not a lot, but I have come across people that would say, I can't do that because that person's stopping me. That person's preventing me from moving forward. But forward can look like a lot of things. You know, it doesn't have to
like
be.
we said earlier, before you get to the other person, put yourself in the mix. This is about me first. So if it's about you first, what can you do there to impact, to influence? You know, if you're going to sit there and going, oh, I just can't do the dishes, or I can't clean my room, you know, you know, you can make up any excuses as to why that's not going to happen. But you're in the mix first. So what is it about you? Just look at that. What is it about you first that you can't do this about? Forget about maybe mum doesn't let me wash dishes, or maybe mum doesn't want me cleaning or making my own bed. Whatever it is, what is it about you first that is the impact, or what can you change in there? Because if you make it about you first, then you've got lots of options, you've got lots of choices, you've got lots to look at.
Yeah. What I was thinking about too, say where a teenager's concerned, and mum might not let them go to, parties on Saturday nights, you know, my old dad, you know, is preventing me from having a social life, you know, a good social life, say, their perception of a good social life, you know. So then it's like, okay, you live in an environment where that's the case. How can you take responsibility? You know, you can't go to the party. So what can you do, you know, as a teenager, say, or to take responsibility? You know, that's probably also the question I was asking. An alternative to, because a lot of people, you know, people get stuck. I can't move forward in that direction, or because I can't do that particular thing that I want to do, then I can't move, you know, that's hindering me in some way of moving forward.
So if you had that scenario, it always comes down to you though. So your parents won't let you go to the parties, right? You can get freedom if you're taking responsibility. So what is it about you in the mix that they won't let you go to the party about? Like, what is that about? If the parent is thinking this person's not mature enough to be exposed to whatever's going on at the parties, then, you know, they might not be of age. Or if that person is of age and there needs to be more conversation around what is it that you need to show responsibility about when you're at the party to get the freedom.
A very good point.
To get the freedom.
They could ask the question too.
Yeah, it's still about you. Like if you're a teenager, you can still say, what is it about me, mum, that is hindering me being able to go to the party?
Yeah.
You could ask yourself that if you don't want to ask mum. Well, you know, you can still ask yourself that and go, oh, maybe it's because I've demonstrated something, or maybe it's because they feel I'm not ready because of something.
Yeah.
But it still always comes down to you first. And taking responsibility, you get freedom. Yeah,
great. That's good. Yeah, it's like trying to find, take responsibility is saying, well, what can I do? And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that in a sense, because it's like you mentioned earlier, the mirror. You've almost got to look in the mirror and go, oh, and see the icky bits, so-called icky bits. You know, I mean, it's just a perception.
It's maturing. Yeah.
And go, oh, okay, I'll look at that thing about me, you know, that potentially could be looked at and, you know, grown or developed or developed, probably a better word. So, you know, it's a really good point that you make there. I think we're not stuck, I think, is probably what I'm trying to get to. There's always ways of taking personal responsibility.
And those icky bits you're talking about, most of the time we don't know they're there. Like there's parts of me that are really immature.
Yeah.
I love those bits.
Yeah.
I love those bits, you know.
Same.
I was telling my osteo just the other day how my husband and I get into big water fights, and he was like, "What?" Like we had to mop the whole kitchen and the living room and the bedroom because we were just in a massive water fight. Anyway,
yeah.
So I'm not talking about being playful, but you know, there's so many bits of me that, you know, I've got this head chef responsibility at times. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't want to make my bed. Sometimes I don't want to get up. I don't want to do the dishes. I can't be bothered cleaning the makeup off my face at night because I'm too buggered, you know. No one's saying that you're like that completely, but there's
you don't have to be rigid with it. Is that what you're saying? Nobody's saying just you've got to be. It's got to apply.
You don't have
board.
to be like that 100% of the time, but you've got access to that. You can create that inside you, that radical responsibility. All right, now I'm going to sit in this responsibility, fully disciplined. What needs to happen here? You need to get yourself to the gym. Go now.
Yeah, it's so true, because then this speaks to something we were talking about beforehand as well. The responsibility, just that word, like I shied away from that growing up. Like, I don't want to be responsible. That's just too adulty, right? And so we get these ideas that responsible means
adulty.
And especially for my personality, to me, that means getting it right. That's my personality. You know, it thinks that responsibility means getting it right as well. Okay. And, you know, I think for me, what I like about just taking responsibility is also saying, well, I don't have to get it right. I just gotta, it's really good for me to say that, you know, no, you don't have to get it right. Just the responsible bit in this is just seeing this is what you do, this is what's happening, this is how you respond, this is what's affected you, this is what's hurt you, you know, just taking ownership of that, just seeing it, you know, at the very least, just see it, you know, and that's taking responsibility of really that's probably what I've enjoyed more recently because of my personality, just going, no, it's all right, you don't have to get it right. You know,
so you're owning it.
Yeah, just see it. Just see it, and then you can develop it. You can change it. You can,
if you want to,
expand on it. You can, you know, can. There's a whole heap of cans after.
That's right.
But,
yeah,
I think I've really enjoyed that for me. Just going, no, responsibility doesn't mean rigidly getting everything right, and you look like this proper adult, like you said. You like having play fights with, you know, your husband or water or whatever, and I like mucking around with my 13-year-old son. We like, you know, we speak like that. And I love, you know, it doesn't mean being this upright, rigid. I keep thinking of ones that's, you know, but upright, rigid, sort of like all together, you know, got it all together. Responsibility for me is owning my mess too.
Yeah.
And being able to clean it up. You know.
Yeah, but that's all that we're looking at as an option. It doesn't mean that you have to turn into that as your personality or your identity. But I do have a lot of that in my identity. That, you know, we've talked about. I probably hide a fair bit, but it is there, and it gets shit done, and it makes me disciplined, and it makes me get the outcomes that I get.
Yeah.
It just works for that. It's a tool. It doesn't have to be about an identity, but it's a tool.
Well, it's like you said earlier too. It's when with your business, you know, you don't mess about. That's it. So you kick that into gear. I need to make this happen, and I've been much the same. Where I'm concerned, it's just like, right, I'm going to do this, and this. But then you might come to my house and it's a mess. You know, it just depends. But then it might be really clean, you know, because I really like clean house. But sometimes I just can't be bothered, you know, and I'm okay with that.
And it depends where your focus has been. If your focus has been on your business all week, my house is a mess when that happens.
Yes,
because your
exactly.
focus isn't there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I sold the restaurant in 2016, my focus had been on the restaurant, getting the restaurant happening, having my expression come through the restaurant, the food, the environment, the atmosphere. And then we sold the restaurant and I came home and I was just like, what happened here? It's like people died.
Yeah.
It's like coming to a funeral. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, I've not been here.
Yeah.
That's not where my focus was.
It's a good point. I think,
So,
you know, and this goes in, well, like values. We were talking about values last night. Values is a good one. I love talking about values. But it might also be where your values lie. I mean, I actually, you know, I was talking about a creative outlet. One of my creative outlets is changing my house up. I just do it. I can't, you know, I always change things and move things and, you know, take that out and put that in and change that picture and put, you know, for me, that's kind of how I can, in my immediate environment, and it gets that physical thing going for me too, because I need to, sometimes when I've got a lot of energy, I need to move things around. I need to
you're
move
changing
my body.
stuff up.
Yeah, I need to change things up and all that sort of stuff. So one thing I do is definitely just change my living space up.
So what is that about you needing to move your body? What does that do?
I think that I think I get a lot of I think it's a couple of things, but it could be that when I'm hijacked, sometimes I definitely, if I move, I can move through a thing rather than just sit there and, you know, I've noticed that if I get hijacked, I need to move, and it's usually I'll either move stuff around in the house or go and change the colors or go outside into the garden and start pulling out all the weeds and, you know, whatever, that last year's tomatoes, or, you know, I start to do all that physical stuff and I need to move the energy around, right? So although I can't, if it gets stuck and stagnant, it's likely that I'll then start going into some sort of negative mental processes, you know, and thoughts and things like that. So if I move, that's less likely to happen. I can just move through a thing. Sometimes it's after I've been through a process, I need to move as well, just energetically, and probably just to get inspiration back, or, you know, yeah, I think those are the main reasons why. There's sometimes there's a lot of things. I've even thought like sometimes it could be, we've talked about lack mentality, you know, and I think sometimes it even can be that. There's quite a few reasons why that there's movement, but I'm aware of them.
You definitely get the cogs working, and it's like movement is shifting you through physically some energy.
Yeah,
I love that metaphor as well.
Yeah, it's
of
for a
not
few
getting
reasons.
stuck.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can get stuck. I think that sometimes I need to just sit still, and I can do it. I can happily sit still and stare out the window, you know. Not so much anymore, but certainly there has been periods in my life where I can do that. But then sometimes the opposite happens, where I do need to move, and I need to physically move that energy so that it just doesn't get stuck or something. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I do, but it's different every time. It really just depends on what I need at the time.
Well, it feels like responsibility.
Yeah,
it feels like I need to move, get it onto it now. Find anything, pull the garden out, and you start moving into that.
Yeah, I think part of that responsibility for me has been creating awareness about what I need as well. So awareness around why you're doing that. Before, I might have done it unconsciously, and it's like I intuitively knew just to move things, move around, move my, you know, movement, you know, shifting big things or whatever. But then now I've just become aware. You need to do this, you need to move. So you need to get out into the garden and start, you know, digging up and whatever. And so now I think part of that responsibility is just becoming aware of why I do the things, because then they can become useful tools when I'm aware. You know, it's kind of like, okay, what have I got in my toolbox? What do I need? What do I need to do? Well, you know, you like to move things. You know, you like to dig holes in the garden if you've got this stuck energy. So do that, you know.
And you're being responsible like an adult. You're being a functional adult that's taking care of the needs that are required here.
Yeah, I see where that functional adult thing comes in now.
They're responsible for meeting the needs of the family and for meeting the needs of the kids and yourself, keeping yourself healthy and positive and everything you need to do to get the job done. And I said need to do. See, it's taking care of the need.
Yeah.
Being responsible for that person that takes care of the needs. And I think where that responsibility, the radical responsibility is of taking care of your need in the experience of it. How am I experiencing things? So we can move from like functional adulting to being responsible for the needs you have of others, the environment, you know, what you want for yourself. But when we talk about radical responsibility, it's more like a big awareness of how to enjoy being you in that responsibility. How to enjoy being safe, secure, everything you need, and in the enjoyment of it as well, and you giving yourself that with love. It's like we've spoken about this too before, of being the person that loves you first. So you're going to give yourself that nice experience. You're going to give yourself the joy of being alive. You're going to give yourself anything that's required to make that happen for you, because you matter and because you love yourself. Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of me at the beginning of this podcast. You're saying that I look like I'm really happy and glowing, and it's because of the joy. That's what you said just before. The more I can sort of take responsibility and I go, oh, what do I need? And I've identified, oh, this is what I need. I get more joy because I'm loving myself, like you say. I'm speaking to what I need, what needs to happen for me for this experience right now. You know, I'm speaking to it. Oh, what are my boundaries? That's a boundary, you know. And I'm just identifying it brings me more joy because I've got my back, you know. I'm taking ownership and I've got my back. You know, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I need that, you know, or that was a boundary. No, you know, whatever, does it, you know, and I'm kind of enjoying that whole experience.
What do you mean by that's a boundary? What are you highlighting?
Yeah, good question. It might be like we've talked about, say, getting hijacked. It might be just that moment when I realize, and this is where the joy has come out of it, where I realize, hey, you're getting hijacked. Why? That was a boundary. What was a boundary? Oh, somebody just said something and that really upset you. So before, it's all the other things might come to, like what you described earlier, like we might get angry with that person, that, you know, they're an asshole or whatever. That can come. But the joy that I've been getting is acknowledging and identifying, hey, that was a boundary, Mish. And so just speak to that. You didn't like it, it felt uncomfortable. And then what do you need to make yourself feel better about that? And it could be a whole array of things that I might need, or one thing or whatever, just to make, it could even just be just remove yourself. Just go home or go, you know, just, you don't have to be there. And that's just, it's still taking responsibility. I'm not saying, oh, you're this, you're that, and, you know, because you're allowing a piece of you to go into that person or to that experience. I'm not saying I still won't, but the first thing I do is speak to me, you know, okay, well, what do you need? You need to go. You need to whatever. And then, you know, and then experience whatever comes up after that potentially. If something comes up, or go through a process like you described earlier and maybe come out of it where I don't get hijacked or I don't call that person an asshole. It may get to that. Or I might and feel good about it. Nah, they're an asshole. you know, just go away and go, no, they're an asshole, but I know I'm in it, but they're still an asshole.
Mm.
You know, but it might be that, but there's actually joy out of having your own back.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's the love thing you're talking about. You love for yourself. You're looking out for yourself.
You're
and
first.
it's parenting. It's adulting, man. It's like, okay,
Yep.
I'm being responsible for myself. I'm being the
And
adult.
if you think about it in terms of when we were small and an adult doing that for us,
Yeah.
modeling that, making sure that your feelings were validated for yourself, you were heard. And then once you were heard, you had the experience of being understood and seen and being there first. Then you could see the picture in a different light. You could view what's happening outside differently, and you could choose. Well, just don't hang around that person anymore. They're just not a nice person or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you haven't been heard as a child and you haven't been validated, and no parent, no functional parent has modeled you're an important thing here, we don't know sometimes how to do that. And so when you take responsibility, you are saying, I don't know. I didn't know how to do this before, but I certainly can learn now. I certainly can learn what it is to be a functional adult, to be responsible for me, to make sure that I am first, I am validated, I'm understood by me first, and then I can make choices around that and how I choose my experience. So being responsible is also, you know, moving forward and we don't have to sit, well, we can sit in that sad space to acknowledge what our childhood wounds are.
Yeah.
But also it's the next stage where we go, yeah, they were there and they're going to be with us until we die.
Yeah.
Those wounds are going to be, we're going to carry those for the rest of our lives, but I'm responsible to take care of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think we need, I mean, it's entirely up to us. I think it has been an important process for me personally to for me and my personality. It might not be the case with other people, you know, but to have a look at what the cause of some of those things were. Like you said, you know, maybe we weren't parented, you know, by a functional parent, say, you know, and so we weren't modeled how to look after ourselves, identify what our needs are, know that something's a boundary, and, you know, ideally that would be good if a parent said, no, that person, they can't step over that boundary, no, and they've got you back. Ideally, that's the scenario, but for most of us, it wasn't the scenario growing up. So I think it can be an important part of the experience to have a look at those things, definitely. But I think what we've learned in this kind of work is that you don't have to, and you can if you want, but it can be your own private experience. It's entirely, and you can do it if you want, only when you're ready, if you choose to do it. But you don't actually have to. You can just acknowledge, even particularly when you're doing a session with somebody, hey, there's something there, you know, potentially. It just depends, you know, everyone's going to be different where that's concerned. But I think certainly where personal responsibility or radical responsibility is concerned is that you get to choose your own experience. How do you want to do this thing? You know, it's up to you how you want to do it. And there is no right or wrong. And you can source all the tools and the people that you like to help you through this being responsible.
Yeah, that's right. It's so true, Misha. And that's what we've worked with as part of the NLP framework. We do move into that solution-oriented framework where that's, what do you want from this now? What do you want instead? We're always sitting in the solution. We can go into the past and have a look at that. But this tool of being responsible for you today, regardless of what's happened, everybody has access to that. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And it gets you really good stuff because you become disciplined and you become free. Like, you discipline that part of you, not all of you. You don't have to, well, I don't know, maybe discipline has kind of you pull the fun out of things, but you can still be disciplined and still have all the other parts of you, but bring that in.
Yeah, there's connotations around the word discipline. We were just talking about this yesterday, but because, you know, it kind of suggests, like what we were talking about earlier, something rigid and, you know,
and authoritarian.
Yeah. But like you said, and it's your own personal experience, just, you know, discipline doesn't have to exist across the board in everything you do. But I do find that this kind of work, there is an element of discipline to it, because it's like what Don Miguel Ruiz said, you know, you've got to stalk, in a way, you've got to stalk yourself. You know, there was, and he quite put it like that, but he talked about this idea of stalking yourself. And to me, that just kind of says there's negative connotations around the word stalk as well. So to me, it kind of
sounds creepy.
I know. I think it was just that language barrier, I would say, because he's South American.
Okay.
Who knows? I don't know. It could be, but like he may not know how much yet. But it sounds creepy. But what he was pointing to was, it's just it is discipline. You know, you've got to kind of this constant observation of what your experience is, what's going on inside your internal dialogue, your external dialogue. You know, it's constant observation of your experience. So
yeah, and being true to your word. Like you say, you're here for you, right? This is your life, Misha. You say you're here for you. So why are you going into doubt? Why are you doing that? Why are you allowing that? You know, or why are you doing this, Jess, where you're going into shame about something that you know, you say you're here for you. So prove it.
Yeah. And I think, and the important bit too is, like you said before, why are you going into doubt? And doubt or shame. Oh, and people may stop at the whole point where, I feel shame because I was shamed as a child. So a million times or once, this big shame, whatever. And you kind of stop there. But then the responsible part is like, oh, but then what? Now what? Now what can you do? You know, okay, you can still hold that. You don't have to put that anywhere. You can still hold it with love and say, okay, this is an experience that I've had, and I can, but what else can I do around that, outside of that, as an expanded part of that? You know, what else can I do to grow more? You know, to not stay stuck in just the shame or the guilt or whatever else comes up. You know, what else can I do beyond that?
How to love you there.
Yeah, still hold it. It doesn't have to go anywhere. And you can deal with it bit by bit. Part of the responsibility is saying, okay, I have this there too. But I'm also going to do this, you know, beyond that, outside of that, in addition to, potentially.
It's part, like we've said, owning it.
Yeah.
Owning it, what is there, and making choices around what we're going to do with it. We don't have to do anything, but seeing it for what it is, and then choosing your experience to make this life richer, to make this life, to accept it, to accept you with love.
Yep. I like it. I'll probably use it much more now when I hear those kinds of terms. I'm just like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's like, oh, so heavy, responsibility, more work.
Yeah, and it is. You know, it is work.
Our younger selves, that's how we see it, as a younger self, because it's tedious and heavy, and it sounds like a lot of work.
But I mean, it does. And then just look at how, like, I am today, you know, as a result of responsibility or taking radical responsibility or whatever. I actually feel light and joyful as a result, because of all of the things that I've just said. I've allowed more space within myself and freedom.
Wow.
Choices. The more choices you have, the freer, you know, in a sense that you feel. So I don't know. I just think it can be heavy, but there's very rewarding as well. And I've really started noticing the rewards, you know, lately. So I just think Yep. It's good work too.
Does it inspire you more?
Oh, definitely. I have more and more energy as time goes on, which we've both had big discussions around energy and tiredness, and particularly at our age, and, you know, just in sense of changes that we're going through or whatnot, you know, or preempting changes. But still, I think I've noticed the more space I'm freeing up, you know, the more responsibility I'm taking, actually, the less tired I feel. Like I feel like I've got more energy, more time, more space within myself. So
it sounds like a contrast, but it works. But it's true. It works.
And it is a contrast. You know, I think this kind of work, it is. There's rewards and but like you said, and what we've pointed out in previous podcasts, there's some heavy work and some deep work to be done as well. And it's icky. So it's both, but the rewards seem greater and greater as time goes on.
Yeah.
So evident in things that I can achieve now more so than what I used to be able to achieve, say, potentially. So within myself.
Yeah. Well, it definitely, I mean, it definitely creates outcomes. It definitely gets you to where you want to go. It's a good pathway to getting shit done for you.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing tool. Which is why it was really important to talk about today, because it's been happening for both of us. We've both been in this journey of understanding the belief systems and, you know, what we've chosen and where it takes us.
And a really good flow on from our last podcast when we talked about, you know, sitting in your shit.
Yeah, accepting it and owning it.
Yeah.
And loving it. Oh, you're not very good at cleaning your room. It's okay.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for bringing that concept to me. I love it.
Thanks, Misha.
It highlights perfectly what's been going on.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, because like you have these things that you use, but you don't really bring them out or understand them half the time, you know. I do. So, but yeah, it definitely was one that I had to pull out a few times this week and use. And I thought, wow, that is such a tool.
When you say pull out, are you saying that you'll actually go to yourself, you'll say to yourself, radical responsibility, like as a little trigger, like a little activator, or
bring my chef out? It was like, bring my chef out. She's radically responsible. She's like extreme responsibility. Get this shit done. Take care of you now.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Yeah. And it's in contrast, because like what I've really loved also about this work is, because I've mentioned this, I think, in the last podcast, definitely, that I can, in the past, I've definitely been somebody that just goes, you know, like really, let's smash through something, let's cut through. But actually what I've noticed with radical responsibility is a softening, because of the love thing that you talk about. You're loving yourself. So I've actually noticed this. I've become softer. Geez, I'm even starting to tear up a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like loving and caring of myself, you know, taking care.
Yeah.
And it's like giving yourself a big hug and nurturing and cuddling, and, you know, that's a really
being
thing.
there for you.
Yeah.
Like saying, prove it then. You say you love yourself, but look at this moment right here. You've got the choice to take care of this responsibly for you. Be, you know, like a parent who loves you. I'm here for you. I'm being here. I'm proving it. I'm proving that I'm here for you by doing this, by being responsible for you.
Yeah.
It's like proof.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a real, even though that word, like radical responsibility, they're two big R's, you know, it's like, but there's a real softness to it as well, a real sweet tenderness to it as well, because
wow, I love that, Misha.
because of the joy that
I didn't see it like that, but now that I hear it coming from your words, it almost, it softens me, because it's a parent there that's saying, I've got this. I'm going to prove how important you are to me. You know, And
Yeah.
that's why the softening happens, because you are being taken care of by that parent. It's a functional parent that's there wholeheartedly. That's so appreciative and honored to be your parent.
Yeah. It's the mother, you know, how you described even the chef. A mother is a chef too, or can be, definitely, and I certainly am, you know, at home I'm the cook, but it's the mother who's just done the organizing, done all the cleaning, or done the cooking, you know, and the dishes, and just had to have her chef hat on, taken it off, and put a little big knitted card,
An apron on.
Here. Yeah. And then just says, come here, and wraps you up in her, you know, it's that kind of
I've got you
archetype as well, where it's nurturing and loving. This is responsibility, you know, it's nurturing, loving, that's I've got you, you know, as well. And it's very soft and tender in that same way. It sounds aggressive because it's radical responsibility, but there's something that's really loving and nurturing and tender in it as well.
I love that.
Not just this, you know, I've got to do it, I've got to cut, you know, it's both, I think.
Not just that authoritarianism that we were talking about.
Yeah, you know, just ball breaker. It's not just that. That's there too, because a mother as well, if we're just going to use that as an archetype, a mother has to be a bit of a ball breaker sometimes, and, you know, organized and, you know, and protective and rigid, and, you know, but we also have to be soft and tender and loving and nurturing and cuddling and, you know, kiss and cuddles and all those things as well as a mum.
Yeah, definitely that lovingness.
Yeah, the tenderness.
And that what I was getting was that honor, because I often think about, you know, I'll tell my mum on the phone, oh, I've got to go and drive and pick up somebody, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll sound like it's just, oh, it's such a chore, you know. Then I'll hang up and I'll be like, hang on, only I get to do that. I love her, or I love him. And it's an honor to be able to be that parent for that person, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so radical, because you're loving it, responsibility for that person too.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so radical. It's not like responsibility is heavy and tedious, but what makes it radical is that you're honored to do that for you.
Yeah. That's a very good point you make there.
And I love that you're, you know, this honor of being in your body, of being alive and having this experience as you. What an honor. You know, that is such an honor to be witnessing you maturing and growing into this person, and seeing what's happened in your life and your world. It's an honor. So it's radical. It's not common. It's not normal to be taking such responsibility for someone that's you're so honored to be doing it for.
Very true. Very true.
I think that's a good place.
Yeah. Great conversation, Jess. Thanks. I love how when we come to do these podcasts, we really just kind of look at, you know, what have we looked at, what's coming up, what, you know, what in terms of what have we looked at personally, what have we looked at through our own business and NLP, and, you know, it's great. And then
our intentions for it, and our intentions that are running through our week of what's happening. We always end up in a similar place, you and I.
It's bizarre. And we certainly talked about that this morning. It was like, oh my God, we've been going through something similar again.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe we all do. Maybe there's I'm not sure, but, you know, or maybe you and I are just in sync, Jess.
Yes.
Anyway.
Thanks a lot for your time, Misha.
You too.
Have a great week.
You
Catch you next time.
See you later.
Ciao.